I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education for Tuesday, October 5th. Now that we've called to order, I'll ask Charlotte to please call the roll.
Ms. Aronson?
Present.
Dr. Chang?
Here.
Ms. Poland?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Ms. Wilcox?
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz?
Here.
Student Representative Avery Woods Weber?
Here.
Student Representative Andrew Maglio?
Present.
And Dr. Steinberg?
Dr. Steinberg is not here this evening. She's excused for illness. Thank you. Andrew, can you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have any revision to the agenda order, so we will move over to public communications. These are comments on topics of interest from the public. And we have a few people signed up, and then after we make it through those two people, we'll see if there is anyone else who would like to come up and speak. Before we have anyone come up, just a reminder that your comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and that board members do not respond to comments. Also, just a note that we are very interested in hearing your concerns about school matters, but we do not want to hear any personal attacks, so please try to keep your comments on policy issues. Okay, our first person is Russell Gardner. Please come forward to the podium and state your name and address, and keep your eye on Charlotte, and she'll give you a yellow card when you have a minute left and a red card when your time has expired.
My name is Russell Gardner. I live at 8 Willow Lane in West Hartford. I'm here to set the record straight about the last board meeting. I attended the last meeting for the first 30 minutes. It was my first Board of Ed meeting. I did not speak, but I listened and observed carefully. I was not asked to leave. I am not an anti-masker. I am not an anti-vaxxer. Some people did not follow the mask mandate. The first speaker insulted the superintendent, yet no threats were made. No laws were broken, no crime was committed, your safety was not threatened. The second speaker at the meeting offered a compelling argument that she was getting the runaround by the school superintendent. You offered no response to her concerns when you spoke to the Hartford Current and Ronnie Newton, who are obviously watching your back. The press simply helped you broadcast your biased agenda to mislead the public. The board called out a woman for not wearing a mask. This woman was sitting behind me in the very back row, not bothering anyone. She had been so quiet, I didn't even know she was there. The board's treatment of this poor woman was so appalling that I came back later to measure how far away she actually was from you. I used this tape measure, and the distance was 51 feet. She was 51 feet away, longer than my driveway at home. 51 feet away, and you call the police for not following the mask mandate. This is a remarkable achievement by the board. You harass a poor defenseless woman sitting quietly 51 feet away, and then you call the police to kick her out. You should be responding to the concerns of your constituents. Instead, you disparage them and portray them as horrible vaccine and mask foes. You are obviously out of touch with the parents of West Hartford. The parents at this meeting have legitimate concerns for their children. Have you responded to the concerns? No. Have you put them on your agenda? No. There are rules that we follow as a society to keep our community safe. For example, stopping at stop signs. The law requires that the driver comes to a full stop. Did you know most drivers do not come to a full stop at stop signs? This is breaking the law. Yet no one is calling the police every time they see a car not coming to a full stop. This would defy all common sense. It would be ridiculous. It is likely that many of you roll through a stop sign without coming to a full stop. You yourself are breaking the law every time you do this. Don't worry, I'm not going to call the police, but Just remember, you're in no position to lecture parents about anything. Stop hiding behind the mask mandate and your obsession with rules. If you don't support these parents, who will? They just want you to do your job. You're tough as nails in enforcing the mask mandate, but you just don't care about putting these parents' concerns on your agenda. I ask you to add 2 topics to the next meeting's agenda. 1, study the physical and mental health aspects for elementary school children wearing masks. 2, study the efficacy of wearing masks for elementary school children.
Thank you. Next, David Haas.
All right, hello everyone. My name is David Haas. I'm currently a candidate for town council, and I would like to speak a little bit about our education system. Despite West
I'm
Hartford...
sorry to interrupt you. Can you also give your address, please?
Oh yeah.
That's for the record. Thank you.
4 Henley Way. Okay. Despite West Hartford having one of the best education systems in the state and country, I will tell you guys right now from experience, it's still not good. We lack the ability to educate students on human values and character development. Students are growing up in a world where they could care less about cultivating excellence within themselves and are focused on material things and degenerate behavior to compensate as joy. An unauthentic experience of human happiness is plaguing our modern society. Now, I got my bachelor's in philosophy back in 2016 and recently got a master's in screenwriting. Surprisingly, I'm having a tough time finding work, but I really want to emphasize how shameful I think it is that I was in my mid-20s when I first got exposed to basic philosophical texts. I really think it's shameful. And I graduated Hall, by the way, in 2008. But we should be teaching young students, late elementary and middle school, text. So for specifics, Plato's allegory of the cave and his chariot metaphor about the human soul, and even Aristotle's ethics, that they are important. Our entire modern society could use a refresher course on these basic ideas that are very relevant to living a uniquely human life. Now, I think we must begin the long and perilous road of bringing back virtue and goodness into our daily lives, being happy in the moment, instead of being miserable on the inside and merely going through the motions of life without any joy or authenticity. We should have West Hartford pave the path forward to a future of actual excellence and educating our young students to better understanding what it means to be a rational thinking being. And I think today we are all, for the most part, empty shells of misery, empty shells of what human beings could be. And I think West Hartford could lead the way. We're already one of the best school systems. I think we could really lead the way for the country. So, and I say in conclusion, let's stop taking the easiest path possible. Let's begin the hard journey of doing what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have on the sign-up sheet. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak? I see your hand in the back. You can come forward. Sure.
Jean Wiggin, 6 Middlebrook Road. Good evening. Thank you for having me again. Someone recently stated on our town page that parents only come to these meetings when they have grievances, and she has a point. The last time I was here, prior to my recent attendance, was when our arts program was in jeopardy. Thank you for working so hard to keep that program in place. Thank you for all the work you do to make our school district one of the best. I know that dedication to the safety of our children is the driver of the current protocols. But it's been 18 months, and the data is in. The protocols are no longer serving our children's well-being. It's time to change course. The official body that coordinates Belgium's pediatric organization put out a statement published in the Belgium Times on September 21st. They said, testing children imposing mouth masks in quarantine go against the principle of first do no harm, which is included in the Hippocratic oath that doctors took. These drastic actions do more damage to children in the short and long term than going through the infection itself. Former West Hartford resident and PhD viral immunologist Scott Balcetis said, "I've encouraged following public health directives, but sadly, I can no longer say that our response to Delta variant is unsupported by data, wildly disproportionate to the risk, and harmful." Dr. Tracy Beth Hogg, which I'm probably mispronouncing her name, who has degrees in epidemiology and public health, spoke to Congress on September 22nd. She compared COVID strategies in Denmark to the United States. In Denmark, masks are not mandated, and there's a focus on hygiene and distancing. I am a Danish American and have observed over the last year and a half strikingly different strategies between Denmark and the United States when it comes to prioritizing the overall well-being of children. Denmark reopened schools after 6 weeks of initial lockdown before the rest of the economy in April of 2020, and almost without exception kept them open and have only had 2 pediatric deaths in the entire country. In the United States, unfortunately, prolonged school closures have led to learning loss, isolation, obesity, and mental health problems in children, disproportionately affecting socioeconomically disadvantaged children. None of this appears to have spared them from the negative impacts of COVID-19 either. In my view, these are all her words, in my view, the United States' single-minded, myopic approach to the pandemic has created a myriad of public health problems for children beyond that of COVID-19. I feel that our country's failure to do a risk-benefit analysis, as well as good scientific studies of the interventions we imposed upon children to mitigate one disease, has created numerous additional and avoidable public health crises in our youth. Has West Hartford conducted risk-benefit analysis in schools? West Hartford prides itself on taking care of the emotional health of its children, yet to my knowledge, no risk-benefit analysis has been conducted. Superintendent, members of the board, don't you want to know if the protocols you have in place are harming our children more than they are helping them? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak? Anyone else who wants to address the board this evening? Okay, thank you. We will move on to the next agenda item, unfinished business. There's no unfinished business. New business, no new business. So we'll move on to item 5, staff communications and reports, and we'll start with the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. A very good first month of the year has been completed. So we communicate with our kids and our families. One of the great, fears during the summer was with Delta and a lot of prognostications for what spread would be like within the school. And up until this point in time, happy to say that we haven't seen that school spread that we've feared. There's been cases that have popped up, and sometimes one of the problems is that you'll see cases seemingly centered around a school, but it actually tends to be neighborhood cases, spread things like birthday parties, things like that, neighbors. But as we do our contact tracing, we haven't seen it, the nexus be within the school. Our many mitigation strategies are paying off. School's a safe place to be. The biggest mitigation strategy that has worked for us is hands down vaccinations. The vaccination rate of our high school students and secondary students, as I said a couple weeks ago, is within the top 5 in the state. So just a little piece of data from that, and it's anecdotal and you wouldn't extrapolate out, but it matches what we see in other studies. We've had 24 positive cases at our secondary schools so far this year, 24 total cases amongst more than 5,000 students. Of those 24 cases, only 3 of those cases were vaccinated, were people that were vaccinated. So 3 basically breakthrough cases, so a 8-to-1 ratio when we see those cases. And what that means is all those kids that are vaccinated, that are in classes, that end up having a contact, they're not going into quarantine as they're asymptomatic. They're not missing multiple days of school. They're not missing events. They're not missing time with their friends. They're not interrupting processes right now that include and up to applying for colleges as we see that season coming around right now. So really, I just want to give great kudos to our kids and our families and our community for partnering with us, as we have not seen the same impacts that we've seen in some communities with lower rates that have had to cancel games, cancel events, and have significant quarantine issues that have led to significant disruptions within the schools. We announced last week our partnership with the state for pooled testing voluntarily for K through 6 students, those students that still don't have access to vaccinations. And today we were notified that the state will expand this program to include pre-K. So it's a simple nasal swab, not a deep nasal swab. What happens is those parents that have signed their kids up, and it's about 550 parents or so far that have signed their kids up for this. So it's asymptomatic testing. This isn't, I don't feel good, I need to go get a test. This is once a week asymptomatic testing in pools, basically pods of 10, where the results are pooled. And then if that pool has a positive, then they break down and go through the other 10 that were in that pool to see where was the nexus of that positive test. So, inevitably this will catch some asymptomatic cases that wouldn't have been caught before. So we might see a increase in numbers over time, but it's another strategy that's been proven over time with more testing. You can catch things sooner and have less exposure, especially at our elementary levels. So again, thanks to Dr. Morrow and our nursing staff who've coordinated with this program with Quest Diagnostics, which is the state partner we've been assigned. Now, speaking of vaccinations, of our 1,800 employees in West Hartford Public Schools, as we know, the vaccine mandate that came down, 85 total employees aren't vaccinated and are instead undergoing weekly testing. So we are over 95% vaccinated for our staff members across the board. Very thankful to our dedicated staff. Other districts have seen some resignations and some dismissals this week, as well as suspensions for people that aren't in compliance. Our district's been 100% in compliance this week. And just really, I can't thank our dedicated staff enough as for all that they do for our kids, for our families, and our community. And this partnership is what has helped West Hartford get through this pandemic as well as we have. So great thanks to all of them for that. And then on a exceptionally positive note, yesterday was the opening of the Next Chapter bookstore. And it was just a great day as we see our postgraduate program kids, and it's where Omaha Steaks were, right across the street. And it's just a great location and a great store, a great used bookstore. A lot of people have been saying for years West Hartford needs more books and more bookstores. And so to have this in town is great. And I promise you, you won't find a better staff anywhere than our kids. So go in, say hello, and pick up a couple books. So with that, open for any questions.
Do board members have questions? Amanda?
Thank you. For people at home or for people who are here and just in general for our parents, if they are wondering as the year goes on how it works to evaluate all the mitigation strategies, could you just give them a sense of what that looks like or how the district is going to approach that?
Well, sure. We look at all of our mitigation strategies continuously, from our air quality, otherwise, and part of that is we brought in consultants, outside consultants for things like air quality. And then in other cases, it's not just discussions with us, it's discussions with the Department of Public Health. Twice a week, both Andy Morrow and I have separate calls, as well as meetings with the Commissioner of Education. Every other week, I'm in a meeting with the Commissioner to talk about what we're seeing around the state, what strategies are working, and where we're seeing problems and what that's led to. So as we look at things, I've had questions, when will you remove this? Well, right now we're seeing what we hope is not just a plateau, but the diminishing of cases over time. Now, last year we saw that, and then we saw an increase around Thanksgiving, around that time of travel. I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time, but we're going to monitor daily cases. We monitor our contact tracing to look at our mitigation strategies, and we look at it continuously. And if there's other things that come out, we have an open dialogue with the state epidemiologist where we ask, okay, how would this fit in? Is this something that you're recommending, and in what setting do you recommend that? So really just continuous communication over time.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to item B, staff reports and board discussions, and I'll invite Rick Ledwith up for the personnel report. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. This month's report is found on page 2, and as you can see, it's a very light report this month, as we've hired 1 contracted teacher and 1 interim teacher since the start of the school year. The contracted teacher was replacing a teacher who had resigned just prior to the school year starting, and that resignation was reflected in the school opening report. So we're doing very well from a certified staffing standpoint. We continue to actively recruit and hire teaching assistants and paraprofessionals. So we're reducing the number of openings that we have there, but we still have quite a number of positions that we're trying to fill there as well. In terms of nutrition services, we have talked about the staffing shortage that we had in our cafeteria operation. And thanks to the hard work of Tim Przinski, we're now nearly fully staffed in our nutrition services operation. So good news there. In fact, the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, we attended a job fair last week in the auditorium right here, and we were able to hire a couple of people from that fair. So that was very productive. So we will keep you up to date with our TA and para openings next month as well, but hopefully we'll have even better news next month. So that concludes this month's small report. Be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you. Any
You're
questions?
welcome.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 2, programming for deaf and hearing impaired, and I'll invite up Ms. Caballero, Dr. Plass, Ms. Spalding, Mr. Nowakowski McDonald, and Ms. Dix.
It's close.
We try to put the shorter people right in front of the screen, but I think we got you, almost got you there. Everybody's okay? All right, thank you.
Well, good evening. Thank you to my team for joining me. I'm going to introduce them in a moment. Under IDEA, we support students with specialized services and related service needs under 13 eligibility categories. An area that's unique to West Hartford that I wanted to highlight tonight is our services for deaf and hard of hearing students. And so I brought with me a team of our teachers of the deaf, as well as 2 of our sign language interpreters. So I'd like to introduce you to Lauren Dix, Jane Spalding, Luke Nowakowski McDonald, Chris Plass, and currently we have Julie Colbert as our sign language interpreter, and she's joined by Jana Ferraro, who will also be interpreting. And maybe as we figure out some technology. Oh, okay. So they're going to help me explain a little bit to you today about what services we're able to offer for our students and what's special about our programming here in West Hartford for our population of deaf and hard of hearing students. I'm just going to give them a minute so that the presentation gets loaded.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. We're going to try to get this figured out. It's no problem at all.
How did it go at the bookstore today?
I actually had a chance to see Nancy at the end of the day, and she was blown away by how many people came in on the first day. She said it was steady business all day long, that the students were actively engaging with the customers, and that she was just thrilled, and people were blown away by the store. So it was a very exciting first day of real open business, which is thrilling. Yeah. Thanks for everybody's patience while we figure this out.
We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll maybe go ahead without them.
If I may say, let's take advantage of this, of teaching our young people how to respond when things don't go according to plan. And you're doing a wonderful job with that. You're patient and just going with the flow. This is part of the process, a teachable moment.
Thank you, Paul. All right.
Persistence.
Persistence and back on track. Thank you for everybody's patience. And Paul, thank you for helping us troubleshoot. So let me give you a little bit of history that's unique to West Hartford. So American School for the Deaf is the first school for the deaf that was founded in the United States in 1817. Originally located in Hartford, it began to draw, national appeal for students who were deaf. It was one of the only schools, and it was the birthplace of American Sign Language. And it really resulted in a very unique community and culture within the deaf and hard of hearing world, which we continue to benefit from here in the town of West Hartford. Now the school, as you know, is located here in town. And we do have one of the largest populations of deaf and hard of hearing students in the state of Connecticut. There is some federal legislation in addition to coverage and supports provided by IDEA. We also have the Deaf Child Bill of Rights, and under that provision, which is only adopted by 17 states, we have the Language and Communication Plan. And while the Language and Communication Plan is actually part of a federal law, many states have adopted the the Deaf Child Bill of Rights as an additional provision to ensure that students who are deaf or hard of hearing have their needs met in the school. And that really takes you through their mode of communication, their primary language, whether that's signed, spoken language, or a combination of the two, and supports us in our programming to ensure that we're considering all aspects of what a child needs to be able to access their education and their social environment and community. Here in West Hartford Public Schools, we have over 73 students supported across 19 school sites, which include our public schools and out-of-district school settings. We support them with unique programming that supports an oral instruction, ASL instruction, a combination of both, and that's in the classroom and through direct instruction. We also have support within our schools to support other students who are developing friendships and social interactions with peers who are deaf and hard of hearing, and helping them understand how they might be able to integrate with those peers and communicate with their friends, and acquire some sign language too. So it's very meaningful inclusion to support them as they engage in both instruction and social activities with their peers. We use direct instruction and consultative models, and we have different technologies within the district that you'll hear about through the presentation, such as amplification systems and FMs and DMs that support our students in creating the ideal learning environment within classrooms. So I'm going to turn it over to my team, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our programming for our students here in West Hartford.
Well, hello. Thank you very much for having us this evening. We're very excited to be sharing with the Board of Ed regarding our team and to have this platform this evening. My name is Luke Nowakowski. I'm one of the teachers of the deaf, TOD, for West Hartford Public Schools. And tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about hearing loss and the impacts that it has in the classroom. So in order for you to understand what we do as teachers... in order to understand what we do as teachers of the deaf, TODs, it's important to understand the impact that hearing has in the classroom. What does a hearing loss sound like? What does it look like? And why is it important to share? Well, typically at the beginning of every school year, we provide an in-service to our student teams to really help them understand what our students' challenges are in the classroom. So tonight we have a audio simulation that we're going to be sharing with you from a famous cartoon, and we'll go ahead and we'll play that.
5, 6, 7. Aha! You're on my apartment building on Granite Avenue. You owe me $300. Get it up?
Fred, take it easy. It's only a game.
Wilma, I'm just like them big tycoons. I play to win. Now, Barney, pay up or get out of the game.
That's 1 down and 2 to go. Betty, it's your turn. I don't have any more money either. You got it all. Then I'll take the mortgage on your office home. So, come on, take the dice. Come on, don't just sit there like a dummy. I will not have you talking that way to our dad. Come on, Barney. I think we'd better go help.
Oh. 5, 6, 7.
And I'm thinking blue means go, but I guess red means go with these microphones. So that was an opportunity to listen and hear the impacts of a mild hearing loss, moderate, and severe hearing loss. This is what a visual simulation looks like. So this is a popular children's story, and this is simulating a very mild hearing loss, similar to putting your index fingers in your ears. How much effort and extra time is needed to figure out this story? Imagine that this is what you're hearing in a classroom when you're receiving new content, new vocabulary, and then add additional background noise. We already know that our classrooms can get very noisy with students moving around, kids talking. So based on this exercise, what do you think a child needs to be successful in the classroom? Well, I can tell you, as the teacher of the deaf, our team can talk to you about that. We want to make sure that our students have the proper amplification if applicable. Also that they have the appropriate hearing assistive technology, such as FM, DM systems. We know that language is impacted. Fragments of speech has been removed, so it's hard to hear. trying to figure this out, what's being said. So that's an opportunity that we need to maybe pre-teach or reteach vocabulary, work on auditory skills, listening skills, communication repair strategies. Because of these communication breakdowns, we need to help support our students be able to advocate for themselves and ask for repetition clarification, seeking help. And that also links over to more self-advocacy skills regarding amplification. What do I do when my hearing aid battery dies? What happens when your ear mold is clogged? You don't have access. And we want to make sure our students have the most optimal communication access in the classroom. So this was the story, City Mouse and Country Mouse, which happens to be the first play I was ever in 4th grade. I thought I'd share with the team this evening. How do we hear? Well, sound travels in waves. It enters the outer ear, goes into the middle ear, and then goes right into our inner ear, and the auditory nerve sends that signal to the brain. What is a hearing loss? Well, you just had the opportunity to see and hear it. So it is any degree of loss that reduces the intelligibility of a speech message to a degree inadequate for accurate interpretation of speech. Hearing loss is an invisible condition. We cannot see hearing loss, only its effects. Because the presence of hearing loss is not visible, these effects may be attributed to confusion or changes in personality, even a mild hearing loss or a unilateral hearing loss, a one-sided hearing loss. The audiogram is an important document that we need to identify if a student requires our services. The audiogram is also an integral part of our work as it notes the parts of speech impacted by the hearing loss, and it identifies the type and the degree of hearing loss. No two hearing losses are the same. Again, this is why it's so important that we have access to that audiogram to identify what parts of speech are impacted. If it's a high frequency hearing loss, then we're concerned about maybe the S sound, the T sound, TH, F. Is it progressive or stable? Is it conductive or sensory neural? And these are some behaviors in the classroom that may affect students in the classroom. And I'm going to turn it on over to my colleague, Jane Spalding.
All right, so what's the impact of hearing loss within the classroom? So research has shown that on average, children with even a mild hearing loss perform poorer than their typically hearing peers without any additional services or interventions. And then, of course, as hearing decreases, that would increase the need for services. So here are just some facts about hearing loss and the impacts in the classroom. Just to highlight a couple, hearing devices don't fix hearing loss. In simple terms, it just amplifies and just increases the sound. Also, with early identification and early intervention, the opportunity to develop communication and language skills at the same rate of their hearing peers will increase. So this brings us to what terms are appropriate to use when referring to individuals with hearing loss. So don't use mute. Also, don't use hearing impaired. You might be surprised by this since it's a popular term among hearing individuals, but it's not really appropriate. Now, do you think that hearing loss is appropriate to use for every individual who is deaf or hard of hearing? No, because I've actually heard many people say, if you're born deaf, what did you lose? But let's also remember that everyone has the right to identify with whatever makes them the most comfortable.
A common saying that we have in the deaf education world is that language is caught, it's not taught. And this is very true for typical hearing children. Majority of language is learned incidentally. For from overhearing conversations from our parents, peers, teachers, and the media. This picture is a stark visual representation to remind us that any language occurring outside of the bubble that you see above, which is a very short distance from the child, will not be understood by the child. This means that our deaf and hard of hearing students in district must be explicitly taught language. And this is where we come in. We're the Deaf Services team. And I'd like now to introduce you to our entire team, not just the 4 of us. These next few slides will highlight the 3 categories of professionals that make up our team, along with our roles, responsibilities, and how we partner with each other and outside entities to ensure that the deaf and hard of hearing students of West Hartford are provided optimal access for their communication. The 4 of us in front of you tonight, as we've mentioned multiple times and during this presentation so far, are the teachers of the deaf for the district. We are often asked, why do we need your services? What sets you apart from any other teacher? Our response is always the same. We are teachers of language. All of us have extensive knowledge in the components of hearing loss, the auditory channel, and how hearing loss, from mild to profound, can have an impact on language development. What's unique about our team and the services that we provide is that we're all trained in oral instruction, ASL instruction, and any combination of the 2. This is an extremely rare skill to have, let alone have 4 TODs in district all capable of teaching in either modality to meet student needs. Over the past few years, the team has been collecting data and collaborating to create a comprehensive and consistent protocol to identify a potential student with hearing loss, and this is an ongoing project that we are continuing. Once a student is considered at risk for hearing loss, we consult with the family and the school staff to recommend them for an audiological evaluation. If the evaluation comes back and indicates any kind of documented hearing loss, then we can begin to provide services. To the right, we have outlined services that we provide to the district, including but not limited to consultative services, direct instruction, and equipment setup and troubleshooting. This quote, this is something that we have seen many times, and some of you may not have. Our biggest concern when it comes to hearing loss is access. The best way that we can support our students is by providing them multiple access options to match their learning and language needs. And now these are our wonderful team of interpreters, 2 of whom are here interpreting for you all tonight. Interpreters are language experts. All of the staff interpreters here are nationally and/or educationally certified to work in the state of Connecticut. Some of our students solely rely on the interpreters for their communication access, and others use the interpreters to supplement their auditory learning and access to incidental language. Every individual should have the right to incidental learning. To the right, we've listed guidelines for how to use an interpreter. Teachers who are accompanied by an interpreter within their classrooms are provided a copy of all of these tips during our in-services in the beginning of the year. Last but not least, this is our team of language facilitators. Our language facilitators are skilled in multiple communication modalities, including English, Pidgin Signed English, and ISL. They support classroom dynamics by bridging communication between students, staff, and peers, and are able to provide academic support, whereas interpreters are bound to strict ethics, emphasizing a boundary that focuses on language access. To the right are the guidelines for how to use a language facilitator, which is very similar to how to use an interpreter. Who do we partner with? Together, we partner with all of these different entities. But we would like to highlight that first and foremost, our number 1 partner are our students and their families. Their input is detrimental to their education, and we strive for positive, collaborative relationships that will support our students for success now and in the future, after they leave us. This is something that we are extremely proud of as a team. Like I had mentioned before, as a team, we strive for optimal access, advocacy, and success. These three components were the driving force behind the decision to create a language hub in Charter Oak International Academy. Our very own Dr. Chris Plass, along with others, have developed a program for deaf and hard of hearing students in West Hartford Public Schools. There is specific criteria that determines if a deaf and hard of hearing student is eligible to enroll in Charter Oak. And that program includes everything you see on this slide. By doing this, we have pioneered to create a safe, respectful, and embracing environment for deaf and hard of hearing students across town. It truly is a place like no other. There are sign visuals outside multiple classrooms. Teachers communicate with students using sign. Interpreters are embedded into read aloud stories. And across the entire school, in the hallways, in classrooms, and during events, you will see peers communicating with peers using sign. Oftentimes, as I walk into the building, Juan Million is seen signing good morning to staff and students. It is truly a very magical place for our students, families, and ourselves. We have different programming across the district, which includes everything that you see here, to ensure communication access is vivid and thriving. We offer many wonderful opportunities for students, staff, and community to be involved for an optimal educational experience. And now I will pass it on over to our very own Dr. Chris Plass.
Thank you. We are so grateful that we have the opportunity to work alongside such an amazing group of interpreters and facilitators. We'd like to show you some clips of videos that these interpreters have made in which they have embedded themselves into stories online. Yeah.
Can I have a status? It's not presenting from this computer. The video is going to request access. Can I flip? Yeah, flip this around. Flip it around. Hey guys, I'm back for another read aloud. Can I have a Stegosaurus, Mom? Can I please? If I had a Stegosaurus, Mom, on Halloween, you and Dad wouldn't even have to go out with me trick-or-treating. My Stegosaurus and I would go, and we'd be safe, really safe. One morning, Dad said, "Let's go for a ride." "Hooray!" shouted Rocky. "I wonder where we are going," said Daisy.
Groovy Joe saw something yummy. Groovy Joe started rubbing his tummy. Groovy Joe was living the dream.
It's Harry, they cried.
The sound of a great horned owl. Again he called out, and then again. After each call he was silent.
It's okay to be different. You are special and important just because of being who you are. Love, Todd.
Let me just try. We have a parent and student video that we do want for everybody to be able to share, so we're just going to see if we can get that loaded on this computer for presentation.
And while you do that, just so you know, we have 110 plus of these stories now that we can use. And our interpreters have also interpreted other resources that we have at our disposal as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Skylin. I used to be a student at Conard, and I'm so thankful for the wonderful team that's helped me so many times. Why do I want to thank them? Oh, the interpreters are always there whenever I need them to make sure everything's going well in my classes, and they make me feel safe and comfortable so that I can get along with my peers. Their style fits me, and I can go for them, the teachers of the deaf, for help at any time. So I couldn't have lived without them. I really, wow, thank them.
Hearing loss, setting up their classrooms, their FM systems, their sound fields, educating their teachers about how to best support them in the classroom. The one thing I appreciate the most about Jane working with my daughter is how she teaches her to advocate for herself, how to explain her hearing loss to people, how to ask for the support that she needs in the classroom to be successful. That's a skill that's helps her now, and it will be invaluable to her even beyond school.
Miss Jane helps me feel comfortable in my hearing loss. She helps me get all the equipment I need to feel comfortable in the classroom. She definitely fights for her students for what they need as a student learning in the classroom. She's not only my teacher, but she's also a really good friend, someone that will always help me when I'm in need.
I'm a parent of a Charter Oak first grader with cochlear implants. Since pre-K, he has received support to make his school experience a wonderful one. His teacher of the deaf has provided both in and out of the classroom support. Out of the classroom, they work on pre-teaching upcoming vocabulary in all subjects, letter sounds and how the sounds translate to words and reading, and general language semantics that most students pick up through incidental listening. They also work on important self-advocacy skills that help him both in school and in out-of-school situations as well. In the classroom, our son has a sign language interpreter who also works with him one-on-one to learn new signs, as well as in small groups, such as the Sign Language Lunch Bunch, where he's able to learn new signs with his friends. He also receives audiology support, where his equipment, such as the FMs for teachers, sound fields, and connectivity to iPads, smartboards, and other devices is monitored. I could go on and on about all of the incredible support our son and our family receive from the Deaf Services team, and especially from his teacher of the deaf, Chris Plass. But I will conclude by saying how grateful we are to be part of this program and for the support. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us share a little bit about our department. One that you might not hear a lot about that's really unique to West Hartford Public Schools, and that you won't find anywhere else in the state of Connecticut. We're certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have about our team, our programs, and how we support students.
Thank you so much. I am positive we're going to have a lot of questions. So I will turn to my fellow board members, and who'd like to go first? Jason.
All right. Well, that presentation was well worth the wait. Thank you for the patience and the thought in composing all of those different pieces. I was really excited to see the presentation on the agenda for this meeting because I'm such a huge fan of this program that you all have built. My children go to Charter Oak, and they use sign language in the classroom with their friends outside of school. They sign to each other at home when I don't know what they're saying, and you know, there's so many additional benefits to to the work that you all are doing, not only for the students, the deaf students who require this access, but this transcends their experience as well. That this is an additional learning experience for all students, especially in the elementary for language development. My twins had a speech delay, a significant speech delay, and signing really transformed their life and my parenting life with them. I think one of the most important things I've seen out of this, in addition to those benefits, is that when my children leave Charter Oak and they go to other spaces that don't have these same kinds of awareness or the same kinds of concerns around equity, they are learning what it takes to think about access for everyone, and they have they understand when other places they visit, museums or don't have the same access for their friends, right? And I think that's such an incredible learning experience for them to have. And so I thank you for that. The one question I had was, how do you work with families who don't speak English, but who have a deaf child? And if there are other ways that that you're prepared for that, or that just in your experience, how have those challenges come up?
Well, it truly is, in any case, it takes a village. And so any adult who comes into our program with a child who has hearing loss, whether it be if they are signers at home, if they are natively ASL users, or if they speak other languages, we have a plethora of interpreters at our disposal, which is really nice. We have a lot of we've provided really a lot of partnerships within the entire state of Connecticut, so we are able to get those interpreters when we need them. What we do oftentimes is we use our resources that we have at our disposal. If, just say, we don't have an interpreter, we use Google Translate, we use I believe it's Language Line. We also have there are different apps now that you can use with those families, and we try our best to advocate for them and for us to partner with them so that they understand what their child is also entitled to.
If I could, one thing, Jason, I'm glad you brought up is, this is paired tonight with an advanced placement presentation, which we're known for and have received accolades. This program's like no other in the state, and the work that these people do is remarkable, and we are the leading district in this area. But you hit on what's special. See, people think that this touches about 80 kids. It doesn't. It's all of the other kids also, and how they get to know their peers and how they get to know each other and how that communication is enriched. So this is a program that isn't for a small limited number. It's for all the kids in our district. I'm really proud of the work that they do, and I'm glad they had the opportunity to explain that tonight, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz?
I wanted to also thank you for your presentation tonight. It was very enlightening to me. I hadn't realized that all the deaf services were congregated at Charter Oak School, and I could see how that could be really powerful to create a community like that. My only question, or I wanted some clarification, my kids were in elementary school a long time ago, and one of my daughters did have a hard of hearing or deaf child in her class, and there was an interpreter. And it was, like Jason said, a very powerful experience for her and had a big impact on her. And I think they did a great job at teaching sign language. So I'm just wondering, would any of those students, would everyone be at Charter Oak, or are there still students who are deaf or hard of hearing who would be at any of the other elementaries?
We do have other students, parents are given the choice if they meet the criteria whether to go to Charter Oak or not. So they could be in other schools, and we would provide the services there. There would be no question about that. It's just nice to have a place where the kids have peers who also sign and experience the same things. But they could be in any school in town.
Okay, thank you.
Avery.
I again just wanted to say thank you. I know so many students who are deaf or hard of hearing or who have other preferences. They may not prefer verbal communication, who use ISL, and I've really enjoyed and appreciated the services that you offer. I wanted to ask, since your presentation had such an emphasis on language acquisition and learning, how these programs differentiate at the high school level if they start to branch out or change as we're preparing students to move out of the West Hartford community, many students, to college, to the greater world.
So as they move to high school, obviously it's an individual need within their IEPs. But we focus on the language piece, like written language, the self-advocacy piece to what to do after high school, how to advocate for yourself with your college professors, especially when it comes to equipment that may not be provided at the college level. So we start to focus more on the self-advocacy piece and the written language, the grammar, any of that, depending on individual needs.
And I just wanted to add too that yes, that we have the Charter Oak hub going on, but we do travel. Some of us are itinerant too, where we are traveling to other schools and districts such as Aiken, Morley, going to the high schools, to the middle schools. So we are providing services to students throughout all of West Hartford, no matter where they are located. We will attend.
And I think at the moment we're in 14 out of 16 of the schools here in West Hartford.
Amanda?
Thank you so much. That was, I learned, I'm actually going to go back and look at, is this part of the presentation that we have in our slide deck? Okay, I'm going to go back and look at a lot of those slides more carefully because there were some things that I still feel like I want to absorb carefully. And I appreciated the slide on language, especially how you talked about which language is received as most respectful and which isn't. I didn't know that. And when you talked about hearing impaired as being a term that's not appreciated, and once you said that and I thought about it, that makes perfect sense. Why? So thank you for including that for those of us who aren't as close to this on a day-to-day basis. One of the things I was thinking about as you were presenting is your preparation is so astounding and specific, and talking about the combination of skills that you have and the way that you are prepared to teach in different ways. I'm curious about the training that you receive, and I may be asking something that's beyond your scope from a day-to-day basis, but do you feel like there are still ample programs that are training people to your level with your combination of skill sets so that as we do future planning, there are people kind of projected out to keep meeting the needs of students, or are any of these programs at risk or starting to diminish for the training, for your own training?
I believe that I am the newest one to come out of a training program, so I can speak to that. A lot of our team has all undergone both instruction on the college and on the graduate level in both sign and in listening and spoken language. We have all extensive training and background in language development, and that's really the rock for any program and any solid program in any state for a teacher of the deaf position. You cannot understand what hearing loss is or what we do without having that language background. I can speak for all of us when I say that having both modalities is extremely important in our line of work. We are not limited to the students that we can accept and that we can help and we can support. We can support any student that comes our way. And in order to do that, you must have both modalities. There are programs that are specific to listening and spoken language approach, and there are programs that are specific to ASL instruction. they're in different states all over the country. But we are finding that more and more graduate students are coming in with backgrounds of interpreting, of special education, of other languages and cultures and backgrounds coming in, and that forms the kind of connection and the kind of knowledge that we all have. So yes, to answer your question, there are very adequate programs out there, and we're really looking forward to partnering with more and more of those programs to hopefully gain more knowledge and insight into what we do as teachers of the deaf.
That's wonderful. Do you talk to, or do people from your team talk to our juniors and seniors who may be enrolled in our ASL classes here who are looking for that with the seal of biliteracy and some of the other pieces to teach them about going into your fields? Just because the degree of specialization it seems like a very necessary career path. I'm just curious if that comes into our program.
It's a little separate just as far as curricular goes, because that's not that. I mean, they're not in the instruction program of ASL, but our ASL teachers absolutely intertwine that in the program. We've actually sent a lot of kids over the past couple of years. As you know, ASL became one of the, I mean, really, as far as a course we offered that took off immediately, that was one, and continuously having to expand our offerings in ASL, which is very difficult to get an ASL teacher at the high school level. We're fortunate to be able to fill classes at both Connor and Hall. So that's a part of that curricular field in ASL, which our teachers work with there. Yeah, but certainly that's a good idea too.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Other questions? Lorna?
Yes, thank you. And I have a comment and a question. My comment echoes what my colleague Jason spoke of in terms of just being impressed with how you integrate and immerse the children in Charter Oak. My youngest is at Charter Oak, and my oldest graduated from Charter Oak, is at Sedgwick now. And I recall seeing students that were a part of the curriculum, a part of the learning experience. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. It definitely was not a culture of us and them. It was we. So thank you for creating that. My question is, what motivates / inspires you with what you do?
Speaking on, I think that watching our students and seeing them fly independently is the most motivating and inspirational moment for me as an educator, when my students are advocating for themselves and going into the classrooms and reminding the staff to turn on the FM or to mute it or to ask for things that they need. That's what motivates me, is when I see my students becoming their own advocates, telling people what they need, and then feeling proud and confident about it, and then knowing it's okay. And so I think as an educator, as a teacher of the deaf, that probably inspires me the most, motivates me, as well as our team. Our team definitely motivates me. But when I see my kids, our students, really become independent, it makes me happy to know they're going to be okay and they are able to be independent.
And I think especially, I mean, they always have, but over the last 18 months, it's been tough. They are the most resilient students I've ever met, and they inspire all of us every day. Their determination and perseverance has taught me more than I could ever teach them. So it is truly an honor to work with them.
I'm tempted to want all of you to answer, but that's okay. I know we have a time bit. But thank you so much for sharing that, just for all that you do. And just what resounds with your message is the self-advocacy. Definitely, definitely important. And I was really impressed when you said, first and foremost, our number one partners are our students and families. And you can tell that by the passionate way that you have presented. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Other questions? I have one question as well. Can you talk a little bit about the partnership with American School for the Deaf? I know that came up in the beginning of the presentation, and I know that is related to why we have so many families who choose West Hartford for their students' education.
So American School for the Deaf, being the first school in the United States to support students who are deaf and hard of hearing really has brought about a strong community that we value here in the town of West Hartford. I think it can occasionally draw people to our area, and I think it's been one of the reasons why we have such a rich community and culture for the deaf and hard of hearing in our area. And we do partner with the School for the Deaf. They sometimes provide shared services where we might have students attending half day, or we might be providing services to students who require full American Sign Language programming. But most of our students are supported here in district. But we do see collaboration for peers, both directions, to support social interactions, and they certainly are part of our community and a member of that community that we partner with often.
Thank you. That helps me understand better. Any other questions? Well, Jason?
Sorry, I had another question that it's just coming to me now. But as you were describing the different forms of ASL that you provide instruction for, I noticed you said, I think it was Pidgin sign English or sign language, and it just made me think about the different. I don't know if this is the correct term, but dialects in sign language, and is there an effort to build continuity across that, or cross fluency, or is there more utility for the student to learn ASL as a kind of as a more commonly used form? Just wondering if you can explain that a little bit more.
Sure. The modality of communication is very student-specific and family-specific. Historically, at the American School for the Deaf, it actually originated, American Sign Language had originated as a combination of home signs, French Sign Language, and British Sign Language. So all of that together has created the ASD community and their very unique sign style. We see a lot of those signs coming out in the town of West Hartford. So we have students that, per se, if they come into our programs from programs at ASD, they're using those signs with our students. Likewise, in different states, every state, it's kind of like accents. If you notice, when I say quat and twat, I'm from New York. So sign language is the same. Everybody comes using accents. And so we promote the use of all of these signs for our students, for our staff, and our interpreters. They also use all of these different combinations of sign because we don't know who we're going to encounter during the day. And it also is different in different generations. The older generations may sign with one or two hands, whereas the younger generations sign with more slang. And so we try to provide a plethora of different signs, styles, and opportunities for our students to see. That way they can communicate within the entire country and the entire world. It's always at their disposal. So that's what we try to do here. It's not like math. And it's hard to explain, but sometimes it's not the same across all entities, but it makes them unique, and it makes the entire deaf community so valuable to preserve that culture and that community.
And I just wanted to add that we were having this discussion today even about the sign dog, that we both had learned that sign in New York, so we used to do this, but it's actually this too. So, we have these different signs, or it's almost like an accent to a different sign. So we can really get really into that conversation, so.
That's incredible, and so cool. Thank you for all that you're doing.
And thank you for educating all of us tonight. All set? Thank you. Yes. Watch your heads, please. And we will move on to our next presentation, the presentation of the high school advanced placement test score results. And I see we have Mr. Vicens and Ms. McKernan.
as Paul gets ready, I'll remind him that the Red Sox-Yankees playoff game has started already.
Can we get that signed?
It's good to see all of you. Take me just 1 minute to close out all of this and reopen where I was. I'll be presenting tonight on the 2021 AP examination results. I am still not on my account. There we go. Oh, isn't technology a lot of fun? Do you have it up? Oh, you know what? Never mind. I'm sorry. I have it downloaded. I can do that. I can do it that way. Okay.
Paul, you're getting a 5 in technology.
Oh, I tell you, this is exciting. So our agenda for this evening is pretty standard. I've given this report to you before, and I think the one real difference tonight is we'll talk a little bit about the impact of the pandemic on our testing results, not only in AP, but later this month we'll talk about our state testing results for literacy and mathematics, and there's an impact with the pandemic, and then we'll have a report in November on SATs. And it goes without saying that closing of school in 2020 in March, and obviously being in hybrid at the secondary level for the majority of the year last year has had some impact, and we want to be able to explain that and also be able to talk about our general results. But with that, I want to lead with talking about why AP in general and our district philosophy, and I really want to underscore that our advanced placement program is an absolute gem for West Hartford. It's an absolute difference maker, and that's not a difference maker for you as a board. That's not a difference maker for Tom as superintendent. That's a difference maker for kids. Kind of period. End of that sentence. Because what we believe in West Hartford relative to advanced placement, we believe that all kids can succeed. So we're chasing an experience. We are not chasing scores. We are chasing opportunity for children. It's been our mantra. It's been what we've been about for more than 15 years, when we really made a conscious effort to open the doors to advanced placement to all students. What that translates into is opportunity to access strength of curriculum. There are a number of reports. I mean, the advanced placement program and the College Board, between the SAT and advanced placement, they're one of the strongest research arms in education. And there are any number of reports that demonstrate that students who take advantage of advanced placement in high school will go on and demonstrate stronger perseverance in college, as evidenced by an increase in GPA, as evidenced by their persistence in college, their completion to a degree, all of those kinds of success factors that we chase for our students. There's evidence that participation in advanced placement and that strength of transcript does provide students with an advantage in terms of college acceptance. And this becomes more important, especially as some colleges and universities may look away from the SAT or may look differently at different acceptance criteria. College advisors are looking for what they can know, how they can compare students from Conard and Hall in West Hartford, Connecticut to students from other states. And a lot of times the way that they're doing that, it's not based on whether or not you have AP or this many AP or that many. It's based on the strength of your transcript overall. So they look at your college program, They look at what's offered in your schools, and if you have a strong AP program, did you take advantage of it or not, versus if you're at another school. Those kinds of things. And the last thing, I think the thing that's kind of probably more obvious is the potential for credit. And that's advanced standing. That can either significantly potentially shorten the number of courses that you need to take, having a financial advantage, or it can offer you opportunity for different electives and different courses that you can experience in college. That's why we chase this. I know that Tom doesn't really get paid anymore, nor do I. If there are 10% of our students or 90% of our students, the payoff is for the students. So I just wanted to kind of state that up front. That's the philosophy that we try to follow. And COVID did have an impact on that. It had an impact in West Hartford, it had an impact in Connecticut, and it definitely had an impact nationally. I go back to 2020. I probably mentioned this last year, but in 2020, with the closing of schools in the spring, the College Board had to make some dramatic changes to the format of the exams. And during the time, what they did was they abbreviated the content of the exams based on pacing guides to estimate, hey, we assume that most schools got through this much content in a particular course by March. The other thing they had to do during that time was because most schools were not in session, students were taking the exams remotely, they had to significantly alter the format of the tests. And they did that with a very abbreviated assessment that was given digitally. In 2021, by way of comparison, the test format was essentially, and the scope of the content was essentially returned, was completely returned to normal. The pieces that were different were the exam formats and testing windows. They knew that not all school districts were in school and not all students were accessing their schooling in person. So what they did was they created paper and pencil tests as normal, and they created digital tests. And they operated under different windows. And in truth, different exams had different options. Our world language classes could only test in person, and a lot of that was based on coming in and having the necessary technology to be able to do the speaking and the listening components of the exam. So there was a lot of different variety in terms of exam format. The exam windows were generally early May for a lot of the paper and pencil, and then late May to early June for some of the digital formats. What it really translates into, and what you're going to hear as the theme of tonight's presentation, is a decrease in overall participation. That's a decrease nationally. Tom, I know, shared some information. He was recently on a meeting with the College Board, and they were talking about some of the implications for colleges and universities. And in truth, the full 2021 study by the College Board to kind of present all the statistics on that has not yet come out. It probably will take another 6 months before it comes out. But overall, we're going to see that there was some exam hesitancy among students, and a lot of that is certainly probably based on students started. Let's think about it. Students started the year in a hybrid. They weren't certain were they gonna get through everything. So a lot of that we can see, and it's interesting to tease out based on. Were you relatively new to AP exams? Had you taken AP exams in your junior year or your sophomore year? How much confidence did you have in that kind of experience? And so there was some hesitancy among our students, and we really did see that in some of the drop off from what has always been historic levels for us as a district. Now, that's not to say by way of comparison to other districts that we had a bad year in any way, just not a record-breaking year like normal. And I do anticipate that this year we'll see a rebound into our typical participation patterns. So we'll talk through some of that. The last kind of change that was pandemic specific, there were no fee waivers for test cancellations last year. There was a, worthy to note, there was a change to the registration window. The registration window changed last year to be early in the year. So it's actually ongoing right now through the month of October and into early November. Last year, due to the pandemic, there were no cancellation fees. College Board recognizing that circumstances might change in schools. I mention that because this year there can be cancellation fees. So we do want to encourage students to participate as we always do. We're always chasing the experience and not the score. But what we're going to see, another theme of the presentation, and it's an annual theme, is that the scores come. By virtue of participation. Over a 20-year period, we've more than doubled the number of students who participate in this program. We've more than doubled the number of exams that are taken, and our average score has not changed significantly. So we always encourage our students, but we want them to know about the earlier window, and we want them to know about the fact that fee cancellations are in place this year. Lastly, and I'll mention it right at the end, there were some changes to exam recognition because the College Board is not looking to incentivize students to be taking 15, 16, 20 exams over the course of their career, and they historically have had a couple of categories of recognition that did perhaps incentivize. They had the state AP Scholar. It was interesting that West Hartford boasted the state AP Scholar. I think it was 4 years out of 5 last year's running. So some of those designations they've taken away. It's not really a big deal, but it's kind of worthy of note.
If I could jump in just while you're talking on the macro level with this, because I was a part of a lot of those discussions where the question really became, do we want to incentivize 12, 13 people chasing classes instead of chasing their interests? And that's something that we always want to make sure that our kids understand. We don't want a kid just taking. There are kids that can take all AP classes and it is not a stress point for them. And everybody thinks, oh no, everybody's different. And for some people that is just where they are. But then you look at, okay, what's my area of interest? Where am I looking to go? What am I looking to do with it? And that's where our counselors, our teachers are so important to talk to them. When you talk about the decrease in overall presentation, one of the things that I do know from last week, this is a major national phenomenon. One of the big issues is teachers had less confidence in themselves last year in their preparation of students. We know that from surveys. The College Board knows that, and I'm giving you about a 6-month preview of what's going to come out over time. That's going to be reflected with students. And I don't mean that about our teachers, I mean that about everybody. When you're affected so dramatically, the big thing that when any of us taught it, we were always, I'm going to get you there. You're going to be ready. We're doing this together. And with so many interruptions, that's going to have a big impact. This overall participation, it's so interesting in that I just thought high school phenomena. And I was talking to 2 major universities, 2 of the largest universities in the country's director of admissions. Both of them had a crisis in August. And I actually talked to the New England region today about this because they planned for so many people to not be in introductory level courses, but not as many people had tested out of the English and those introductory level courses. And they were scrambling to find adjuncts and professors and seats for those courses that historically they haven't needed to offer. But because of this shift this year, that's been a shift on especially the large university campuses.
So it is fascinating to think about it at the macro level. And I'm glad Tom interjected with that point, because as we look at this, I don't want anyone to think that any of the dips that we see are in any way, shape, or form unique, or in any way, shape, or form, signaling anything other than a natural response to the pandemic in that regard. We do expect to maintain a strong program moving forward. So we look at a couple of different metrics, and I'll be cognizant of Yankees, Red Sox, so I'll try to go rapidly, but. We always start with the number of students that are enrolled, and these are actual students taking 1, 2, or more exams. And it's interesting to look at that trend. That trend never fails to be anything other than impressive. Going back, and I can only fit so many years on, so each year I have to drop off a year. But going back, we had roughly 600 students participating in the advanced placement program back in 2004. We had over 1,200 in 2019. Last year we had a total of 1,065 students enrolled, which is still a very, very significant number and almost double the number from 15 years back. But in general, over the course of the 2 years that the pandemic impacted our AP, we were down roughly 15% from our record high of in the neighborhood of 1,200 students. And you can see the numbers there. for both Conard and Hall, kind of stacked at each other. This exam shows a very similar trend. This graph, excuse me, this is the graph of the number of exams. And again, going back to that same early mark, it was roughly 1,000 students, 1,000 exams being taken. Remember, that was roughly 1,000 exams by 600 students. We went to a record high of about 2,600 exams. Overall, we're down about 500 exams over the last 2 years, in the neighborhood of 20%. What's interesting about this, as we talk about this experience and we look at the ratio of the number of actual students involved and the number of actual exams taken. Nationally, that average is about 1.8 exams per student. In West Hartford, we've averaged between 1.9 to 2 exams per student, so pretty darn close to that same national average. And that's important because it demonstrates that our success in this program is not at the expense of kids chasing 12, 13, 14 exams. I've actually looked at the statistics of the number of exams taken per student. It's roughly the same. Our success is in opening the opportunity for all kids. Our success is making it available for kids, and our success is the kids being successful in doing so. So again, just to underscore that point. One of the ways we try to kind of measure that, access to exams, is through participation. There's kind of 2 ways that we look at participation. This first metric, it's one that Chip Ward had come up with. It was quite interesting at the time when he explained it to me. He would look at the number of 11th and 12th graders in the district, total enrollment, and he would look at the number of AP students and look at that ratio. The idea being 11th and 12th graders are kind of your target audience for AP exams, although clearly we have a number of 10th graders who participate, and we have very, very few. It's the exception. It's 1, 2. It's count on one hand how many students in 9th grade, because we dissuade students in 9th grade from APs because we think that's an important transition year. And so these graphics kind of demonstrate access, and it's interesting to note how over the span of the years we've gone from in the neighborhood of the low 40s up into the 70s and even 80s at some point. We were at 72.2% for that ratio of total number of students in the AP compared to the 11th and 12th grade population. That's down about 11% from the previous 5-year average. But the true participation metric that you would probably be thinking about is, okay, if I have X number of children is sitting in an AP course, so if I'm talking about actual seats in a class, how many of those children follow through and take the exam? Last year, our rate for true participation was 74.6, 75%, 3 out of 4 kids. That's down about 10%. Typically, we have, on average, about 85% of kids who enroll in an AP class follow through and take the exam in the spring. Again, a lot of reasons for that dropping. Basically significantly from what we've seen as a historical trend year after year after year, and we do fully anticipate a rebound from that in the coming year. When we start talking about, okay, we understand our access and our opportunity to be involved in the AP program, how about our success? There are 3 metrics that we highlighted in the report, and the first metric is the most important as far as we're concerned. The first metric is the AP Equity and Excellence Rating. That's a phrase the College Board came up with, and what it does is it asks the question, what % of your graduating class has taken at least one AP exam over the course of their 4 years and scored a 3 or above on it? It's really, the board forward-looking had a goal years and years ago that students would participate and be successful in college-level course, and the College Board adopted a metric similar to that. This year, our AP Excellence and Equity rating was a 62.2 for the district. When you average the blue dot and the red dot together, they were a 62.2%. That's tied for the highest score the district has ever received. It's an excellent score. It was the second highest score that Conard had ever received, and it was the top score that Hall had ever received. And what's most impressive is that historical trend, that as a district, back in, I can't read that, somewhere 2005, we were in the low 40s, and we've gone up into the low 60s. So we've gone up approximately 20% over the course of a 15-year span, which again is an opportunity for children. But there are two other metrics that are often talked about, so they're worth at least reporting to you. One of those metrics is the average score on a test. So you read in the report, or you likely know if you've had children go through the high school, AP exams are scored from a 1 to a 5. And anything 3, 4, or 5 are considered qualified to highly qualified. Basically kind of what most schools and universities will start to look at in terms of award of credit. You can look at average score, and our average score this last year was a 3.4. It was actually higher than normal. And again, the reason it was slightly higher than normal was because we had fewer kids participating. There's an easy way to get higher scores on AP tests. That's limit your participation. Make it more exclusive, make it more difficult to take. Basically disallow access to a greater number of kids who would otherwise be successful. That's not really what we're about. We're not going to celebrate the fact that we have a 3.4. Anything above a 3.1 for an average score for the district, we see as a success, especially when we talk about the fact that we've doubled the number of kids who are participating without that average going down significantly. So that's average score. The other metric that we do look at is the percentage of students who score that 3 or above. And we are at 77%. It's not. That's pretty much on average with I believe with where we are generally. There's an interesting graphic here that the College Board shows to kind of introduce how each of the two high schools perform, and I always look at this and scratch my head because I just said the district average for percentage of 3s and above is 77, and I look at the 2021s and I see two numbers both higher than 77, and that's because in the fine print there, this is the percentage of AP students who had a score of 3 or above, which means as an AP student, I might have taken 2 tests or 3 tests, and I got a 3 on one of them. I count in this bucket, but only one of those tests counts towards the percentage of tests 3 and above. So slightly elevated, but still a good metric. Still shows how both Conard and Hall do exceedingly well over the years and are finding success in the program. A little bit of specifics on each of the high schools was included in your report. You see, again, the average scores went up slightly from previous years, and numbers of exams went down somewhat, more specifically at Conard, more so than at Hall. Hall was relatively flat in terms of its exam participation. You see the most popular exams there and the specific equity and excellence ratings for both high schools. We do always like to show how, what is the true equity in terms of our opportunity and chasing opportunity for all students within the district. We traditionally reported on students of color, where I have lumped Black students, Hispanic, Latinx students, and students reporting as 2 or more races. I've also reported out separately Asian students based on requests from the board last year. So what you'll see, and the data that goes back that's easily available, I use 2010 as a benchmark year. And then the 2017, 2021, that's because when I easily go on to look on the College Board website, they will list basically a 5-year span. So 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So 17 to 21 gives me my 5-year span. And if you look to try to look at roughly at a 10-year and roughly at a 5-year span, you see that the number of students of color and the number of Asian students and to include had increased dramatically, had basically doubled from the 2010 to the 2021, pretty much in at least, excuse me, for the students of color, Asian students went up by about 50%, from roughly 100 to roughly 150, 160. You see for students of color that during that same period, their success, as measured by the percentage of students earning 3s or above, increased by roughly 7%. So that's an excellent marker for us. Our Asian students started out at 70. They went up to almost 80. They went down to about 73 last year. So they're kind of having some fluctuations, but they're definitely staying in this performance band that's pretty close to the overall metrics for the district, which by comparison have stayed relatively flat. So kind of the takeaway for this slide is increasing opportunity and encouraging students from all backgrounds to be taking part in this. We are demonstrating the signs of success. We are demonstrating those signs as we add more students in. And that's testament to our teachers. It's testament to our teachers, not just in our AP classes, but at all levels, because it's the preparation that they're providing and the foundation that they're providing and encouragement and making them successful once they see themselves in that class. A last kind of graphic on this opportunity is demonstrated here, and I'm always looking for a good way to try to tell the right story with this. I borrowed this idea from the College Board that does this on a national level. It looks at the percentage, the distribution by percentage of students in the graduating class for that year, which is the blue, blue graph. Bars, thank you. I don't know. It's a long night. The blue bars demonstrate the distribution by race ethnicity for the class of 2021. And the red bars demonstrate the distribution of the AP students, those students who participated in taking of exams. And while their gaps themselves are not appearing to be overly significant, we do see the obvious trend there is that among our white and Asian population, we have a slight overrepresentation. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 7 to 8 to 9% more students in those categories taking part in AP exams as opposed to the percentage distribution that we would expect if all things were perfect. And we have a slight underrepresentation among students of color in the other categories, in the neighborhood of 6 to 7%, if I remember correctly. So the important takeaway here, we need to continue to encourage our students of color to see themselves as capable of taking part in the opportunity because we know that if we get them into the courses, they will succeed.
If I could, normally I don't publicly criticize us here, but this is something that I say, I've said it to our staff at the beginning of the year, I kicked it off. Hispanic and Latinx are overrepresented nationally and underrepresented here and in Connecticut. And people immediately say, well, that's because of Spanish language. They're overrepresented even when you take out Spanish language nationally. So this is an area that the state and we need to focus on, and we are.
Excellent. Last slide, I'll be very quick because this is really not, it's something to celebrate, but it's not the point of the report. The AP scholars I'll typically report out the numbers that we receive. I think the highlight here is, as I mentioned, the state AP scholar and the national AP scholar. National AP scholar, I believe, if I recall, was at 8 exams that you had earned a 3 or above on. Those two are the two categories that they've removed. They no longer recognize for fear it's incentivizing what might potentially be an unhealthy number of exams. But I think Tom's point is well taken. That's kind of an individual thing. I would like to emphasize the AP Capstone Diploma. We were one of the first on the map here in Connecticut and nationally to be looking at this program. We continue to have strong numbers. We did take a dip in some of our enrollments. It's an area that our high schools and our principals know we want to see increased focus because it's really an opportunity maker for kids in terms of being able to participate, whether you're in the seminar research certificate, which means you've taken both courses and earned a 3 or above on both exams, or the AP Capstone Diploma, which you've done that, and then in addition, you've had additional AP coursework. to be successful in. That is kind of like a speed pass ticket for you in terms of college admittance and opportunities. So that is the overview of the report. I would welcome any questions and discussion.
Thank you very much. Questions from board members? We'll go Avery and then Liz.
I just wanted to ask for my own comprehension, and forgive me if I'm misunderstanding this. On the achievement gap analysis, there's the district average, and then there's the analysis of Asian and students of color. Do you know the percentage earning 3+ of white students and what the point difference between that and students of color and Asian students might be? Because there is a difference of about 5 for Asian students from the district average and 7 for students of color.
Are you talking specifically from the 2010 to
2021, just
to
the
21?
most recent data.
To be honest, I don't have that number specifically off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to get it and send it out to you and the board.
Thank you. And I see where you're going with that, because if the district average includes everybody, then it would be illustrative for us to see just the students who are white, right, and what their scores are. Is that what you're headed towards? Okay.
If I could, there's an element of, Paul and I discussed, this is the Simpsons paradox question, in terms of when you compare us to other districts, okay, this is too long of a description. So we have it. We'll get it in writing to you. It's going to take too long to.
Okay, I trust you. Liz?
Yes, I had a couple questions when I was going over the chart. I noticed for the research and seminar category, over in Hall, the seminar went away. I know we had it last year, so I was wondering about that. I have just a couple things I'm going to ask at once. So I was wondering what happened there. And then when I was looking at the English Lang and English Lit, we have a significant amount of people taking the English language AP junior year. And I'm going to assume that many of them go on to take the English Lit. And I'm wondering why that number drops so dramatically to the senior year. And then my last question is, I know that you said a bunch of times that we're chasing the experience and not the scores, but in the category of calculus, the score does matter, because when you go off to college, that is a class that you can waive and it kind of sets you up, and it is nice to get that 4 or 5 in calculus, and also shows that the calculus class, it taught the kids properly. So I'm wondering, we only had, and I'm assuming that in the Calc AB, that there's quite a few people, maybe more than the Calc BC. And over at Hall, we only had 22 kids taking that test with not a great performance. And then over in Connard, quite low too. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Sure, I could speak to all three, and thank you. So first, AP Sem, and that will rebound. Yeah, we had lower enrollments in that class at Hall last year, which resulted in the course not running. And it's one of those areas that it becomes a very challenging decision. We had that a couple of years ago. You may recall I'll use Spanish, the second one, Spanish literature, as the example. That's a course that runs typically on low enrollment at Connard only, and they've offered the course at Hall. They just haven't had the following of students attracted into the course. And so it had a 1-year blip where they just felt that they couldn't afford the FTE to run the course because they didn't have enough students. It's a very challenging situation with seminar and research because of the coupling of those two courses, because of their uniqueness. And you'll see that those are courses that we will do our best to try to protect the experience and be able to offer that within reasonable fiscal constraints. And so that's one of the things that happened. Tom, you look like you want to jump in.
Yeah, if I could recommend one course to any student, it would be AP Seminar. I think it's the best AP course. And we still haven't found that toehold with it fully. And it's happened at both schools at different times. There are some changes coming with the structure of the course, maybe looking at it as an English bearing credit sophomore year. This wouldn't be in effect for another year minimum, depending on how you organize the course, but also organizing that course around media literacy. And so that you could take that course and focus it different ways. There's actually an African diaspora course centered on AP Seminar that you can teach it all around that subject, which is a phenomenal, and I know Ann's done a lot of work looking at that over the past year, a phenomenal way to teach the course. So if there's a course I want to protect, it's AP Seminar, but if only 2 kids sign up for it, that becomes the issue. So we need to sell it better, we need to convince kids, and we need to talk to kids about why isn't that a course that they're seeing. And a lot of the times it's because it's in competition, and how does it fit in? And that's because of the articulation of credit with that, where they're worried because that's not a course that you're necessarily going to get credit for in college because it doesn't fit in. I get credit for calculus in the math department at college. I don't necessarily get that for seminar. What we've got to get across is that is something that colleges look at and do see the benefit of that course as far as part of the admissions process. So that's something we need to get across better.
Absolutely. And so you'll see that dip. You'll see that research next year at Hall because there's no one feeding in. They won't have any scores the following year, but we're really looking between both what's kind of happening at the macro level to try to attract more kids in, and then the other challenge with that course is it's not attached in the same way to a department, the way economics is to social studies and physics is to science. So we need a concerted effort across departments to make sure we're recruiting into that course, because as Tom said, it's the number one course he would recommend to sophomores. In terms of AP Language, AP Lit, you are correct that AP Language, always the most popular course, an 11th grade course. The year students are applying to colleges. AP Language, a senior level course, there's a lot of drop-off, and the drop-off can be explained in different ways. There are a lot of senior level electives. Hall has always had a harder time recruiting because Hall has some really rich senior level electives in language arts. They have Brit Lit. They had a very strong women's lit. They have a great course called Voices of Inspiration and Rebellion. So they have these really attractive alternatives that have always made it a challenge to recruit in. We used to, I think we used to have a program we would try to get. I'm thinking of AP Lang where we get the 12th graders in, but that was the lit course.
And you also only get 1 English credit typically in college. So the redundancy of the course doesn't pay off in terms of getting credit for college. So that depresses it at some, but you're right, it's far more of a Hall phenomenon than it is at Conard.
Right. In AP Calculus AB, I'm going to tell you that shamefully that we had a really bad year in AP Calculus AB. It's, I can try to explain away the fact that math is sequential and that there was certainly an impact, and there's some truth to that, but I'm equally, and I know our department supervisors or teachers are equally discouraged by that score. So the positive note is that there are instructional planning reports that come from the College Board that talk to you specifically about the cohort of students that you had, what their strengths were on the test, what their shortcomings were on the test, and that's something that our team has been looking into. I had a conversation about it about 2 weeks ago where they were sharing with Ann and I in terms of some of their initial thoughts as to what shifts they need to make and what maybe went into that, because it was dramatically different from where we've been in the past.
Just to follow up, I was really concerned about that score, and I went and I pulled my notes from last year, and in 2020 there was 41 people who took that test at Hall with a 66%. So it did fall, but 66, so you're pulling a 85, 86 in your lang, and then the math, which is, I think even more people than 41 should be taking that test, because how many people are probably enrolled in it? There's probably three sections. Yeah. So, and I just think that's a very important class for college, and we should be getting better results on that.
I can do nothing but agree.
This has been something Paul has pushed more kids to take calculus since I've known him. This is something we're both passionate about. I would say that nationally the scores are significantly lower for the calculus exam vis-a-vis the English exams, so that's understandable. And the other thing about scores is, and especially in the math and English areas, but overall, one of the things about the three, everybody thinks about the three because it's credit, and they're thinking college credit. All of the studies over the past years the College Board has been doing have been about especially twos and what that means for college readiness. And even changing the paradigm in scores and in score reporting to students about college readiness. Because if you get a 2 on an advanced placement exam in that course area, you show a readiness level to succeed at that course in college. That's unquestionable, and that's been the dramatic evidence that's come out over the past couple of years. It pairs with some of the reasons why the disincentivizing of so many classes, because up until taking 5 advanced placement courses, each one you take, there's incremental growth in that student's success rate in college. So a student taking 1 has, and 2, after 5 to 13, there's no real difference in that student's success rate in college once they get there, either in retention or in success. So really that look at how we label the 2 and what it means, where it may not be credit bearing, but it does exhibit a readiness that college admissions officers know about. That's something that also we need to get across to kids so that they're willing to take that test. I think that's a very good point, Liz.
Andrew.
I have a question about, I saw that at Connard, AP Lang was taken, or AP English Language and Composition was taken significantly more than at Hall, and then you kind of have the opposite with U.S. government and politics. And I'm wondering if this is just a natural, if this reflects maybe the years, the students' interests, or if this is something that is maybe more deeply rooted, and whether the board is trying to address this or it's completely acceptable.
I would say it's, and I'm going to let Ann share the mic, but you go back a couple of reports, the Gov and Politics has been a significantly more popular course at Hall for a number of years. The AP English Language has been a strong course at both schools, but Connard seems to always have a good chunk more than Hall, and I want to say that that's cultural in terms of the 2 schools and the departments. It's pieces that we talk about. It's also some of the competing alternatives that are offered. It's interesting if we weren't looking at AP, if we were looking at just music courses or differences in math enrollments across the broad spectrum of what's there. There are a lot of those differences that become niche courses at different schools. Sometimes it's the draw of the particular instructor who is like a Pied Piper for students and just can amass a great following. I don't know if you have to add.
My only addition would be that at Connard, the English language option in 11th grade, again, it's the only, there are no other options. It's standard or AP, where at Hall there are electives, and so that does affect some of the competition. So Hall has competition, a lot of competition in both 11th and 12th grade for students who might otherwise think of AP, and that explains that one. The Gov and Politics, I would say, similar to what Mr. Vicina said, is sometimes courses get a kind of like a popularity, and kids hear about them and they love them, and they just get a life of their own. And I don't know if that's the only explanation. I'd actually like to understand that one a little better as a former U.S. Gov and Politics teacher myself, and thinking it's a great course. It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that one.
Avery?
I have another question, and I'm going to be completely transparent. I'm asking this question in regards to courses at Hull that are offered as electives, like U.S. History, African American Experience, Women's Lit, which offer unique curriculum at Hull for experiences that are often marginalized in nationwide curriculum. And I just wanted to ask, how are we ensuring that the value of experience is being communicated to students as well as admissions officers in regards to what we're teaching students in AP courses as well as courses that we have the capacity to educate our students on?
That is an outstanding question, Avery. I think one of the fast answers to that question, or at least it's not a real fast answer, it's something that I can point to quickly. A number of our courses, such as U.S. from the African American Experience, some others that I can name, I believe, was it the Voices class? We're looking at early college credit opportunities through UConn, where if we're able to articulate our curriculum and if they're offering a similar course, we're able to provide college-based credit for those experiences. That's starting to happen with greater frequency. We're starting to really have some good relationships with the universities that are articulating curricula with us and saying, hey, we would be willing to offer this for dual credit. And that's one way by which we're able to really demonstrate the portability of those courses and make them positive in terms of having schools kind of take notice of them for college acceptance. And it's something that we're excited to do. Those are the types of partnerships. That's kind of some of the exciting work that happens in the curriculum office in terms of being able to play those out. I don't know if you could name a few others. I know we've had at least 3 over the last couple of years.
I believe the Latin American course at Conard is an ECE. The women's literature at Conard is an ECE. I know they've looked at Voices of Inspiration and Rebellion at Hull to become an ECE. They've asked us to look at that. And sometimes it's working with the colleges to see if there's a corresponding course that meets the needs. So that's one of the ways to elevate courses that have a different voice to a level where there's college credit available. And then as Mr. Moore said before, we're looking to see if the AP seminar course may have a African diaspora component, which would entice many kids to take, might entice many children to take that course, which is an AP credit course. So both through ECE and AP, there are ways to elevate courses of all types for students to gain credit. There's also a course in human development that gets UConn credit as well.
Avery, you ask a major philosophical question about secondary education in the United States and college, and this is why reputation of our schools is so important. And people can say, well, no, it is, because UConn will pick up the phone when I call, when Paul calls, when we talk to our local universities. But the fact is, we're not going to get that national recognition from everywhere about our courses, because every high school is saying, well, this course is really good. But what we've seen nationally, especially in wealthy areas, so I'm concerned about the same things you are, but especially in wealthy areas, especially at our private independent day schools, the biggest story of the past 15 years in American education is grade inflation. So you see the GPAs from these schools becoming markedly higher from those who have wealth. So the idea of the elimination of SAT and the elimination of this as being something that's going to bring everybody into the table, that's something I'm really worried about, because you need an outside metric. That's the benefit of having some advanced placement courses. It's not the idea that we'd rather you take advanced placement U.S. history over U.S. history in the African American experience. I was one of the people that developed that course at Conard. What it's really about is that you have a metric so that a admissions counselor in Indiana that doesn't know our schools, frankly, because they get 5 applications a year or 5 applications every 5 years, can look at your transcript and make a comparison to a student coming from California. Now, they'll compare the districts and everything else, but there are some benefits, because when you're talking on a national macro scale, we can get recognition from UConn, we can get recognition in this state, and West Hartford is well known, not just in Connecticut, but nationally. And that's why I've said we have to have a national brand so that those courses that we value so much have that same recognition that, okay, well, West Hartford offers it. It has to be a real course. And that's why we go through such a lengthy process when somebody wants to propose a new course to make sure it has the rigor that merits credits from a West Hartford Public Schools course.
Does that answer your question? Great. Amanda, I thought I saw you.
Did you have a follow-up? I just had a quick.
Okay, Liz.
I just had a quick follow-up on Andrew's question on the AP Lang, it's in 11th grade. So just for clarification, the electives that are offered at Hall are standard classes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So what is the class that's offered at Connard?
Their courses that are offered, they don't run because not as many kids sign up for it. So it just depends on the teachers. There's been courses in journalism offered. There's been courses in creative writing offered. There's been the same comparison courses as offered at Hall. We don't tend to have dramatically different curricula by department. It's just that the number of kids at Connard historically that choose the advanced placement section is such that the others won't run.
Amanda?
Okay, thank you. And I appreciated that conversation that we just had, especially as a parent, because I know when I'm looking at the course book, obviously, not obviously, my kids are college bound and I hope they'll go to college, but I want them to look at the content of the curriculum and what's going to stimulate them for learning. So as a parent, I do feel torn when you see these really stimulating, engaging classes with content I hope they're exposed to, but then we're having to choose, or I'm not saying having, I haven't reached some of those years yet as a parent, but if we have to choose between an AP experience that helps with college and the benefits of the rigor that come with that preparation, or this really exciting content, I hope that we can keep looking at all the advantages we have to get that content into the AP classes and vice versa. So I really like where that conversation went, because I think that's the secret part of that whole conversation. I have two quick comments and one question. My first comment is about faculty preparation. So when we were looking at the achievement analysis for our Black students taking AP, I hope that when we look at our faculty preparation and recruitment and we're making decisions about whom to train and how we're looking at that, that we can figure that into the equation and I know you're talking a lot about this as well, but also looking at that culturally responsive teaching and the learning environment, so that we can look at the teachers of those classes as well. My second comment is that if we're really digging in and making this long-term commitment to be a district that engages heavily in an AP atmosphere, I hope that we're also going to keep digging into looking at the environment that we're creating, because when we look at the rigor of college and what we all experience in school at the university level, we also had a lot of collaborative learning experiences, whether it was learning in the dorms or learning with our peers or in the libraries or the coffee shops or outside or wherever we were helping each other to prepare. I think that the modern day experience of a student is such that the kids are going to school, they may have activities, and so their homework and their preparation may be more of an isolated individual experience just because they're at home doing their homework, just by the nature of the rhythm of the day. So as we start to look at how we can keep creating an environment where they can learn together, so whether, I know with COVID, we're in a transition right now, but whether it's rethinking how we use our libraries and the degree to which those can become more and more social, and controlling some of those balances that we may need to look at so that kids can learn together, because they are younger. So I think they're going to need that peer experience and find other ways to enjoy that process of testing out the rigor so that they're not doing it alone all of the time. That concerns me just because I want them to keep enjoying that process, and that's part of what we do get when we reach the college time, because we are often together learning at that level and helping each other through it. My question is, if we are having a number of AP offerings, how are we looking at the balance of the standard offerings if we start to have the two polarized choices as time goes on? What does that feel like for the kids?
Okay, I got three things I think that I want to make sure I hit all three. Let me go back and address your first question, which was excellent, which is really really more of a comment that you made about the culturally responsive teaching and how we're preparing our teachers. The good news is, and Ann can speak to this as both our Title II and our Title IV coordinator. These are additional funds that we have for professional learning for teachers and opportunities for kids. But the whole concept of culturally responsive teaching and what we're doing, as you know, and you'll hear a lot of reports this year, this is an umbrella effort. But I think you're sort of making the comment, we need to make sure that we're doing that everywhere within our curriculum to include AP. And, we've made, Rick has come up to the table and talked about the strides that we've made as we look at who we're recruiting into our workforce in general. But what resonated with me about what you said is making certain that we're also being equitable in our distribution of who's teaching the AP classes, because I know that when Tom will do his focus groups with seniors, and we'll hear students who say, it took this number of years for me to see kind of a reflection of myself as a teacher in front of me. We want to make sure that our AP settings, the same as any other settings, are reflective of that, and that students have the opportunity to see themselves in their educators, in the curriculum they're being taught, and everything else. So that is an ongoing effort in the district, and culturally responsive teaching. What we found, one of the things that I continue to position as a first step is making certain that we can break cultural stereotypes to say, if I'm a student of color, I want to be able to see myself as an AP student. I want to know that I am equally capable, I am equally encouraged, I'm equally sought after and identified, because experience has shown if we get students into the class, they will perform. So it's just often for us, it's getting over the opportunity. But I do appreciate making sure that we're making smart choices in the classroom. Collaboration, and I'm going to I'll just say some fast things because I want Ann to share some airtime. But collaboration, as you know, is, I think of the vision of the graduate, and I think of one of the skills and dispositions that we have very expressly put in has to do with collaboration. And you're absolutely right that the college environment feels very, very different than the high school environment, just based on that independence, based on that you figure out how to collaborate, how to network, how to get with students. The thing that's interesting that I realized and was reminded of starkly last year as I was a remote high school teacher, probably contributing to less than adequate scores in Calculus AB, was that, there you go, you identified it, was that the students, we may not know it, the students are finding unique ways to collaborate differently than what I remember. I'm trying to think of the app. Oh, Discord was the app. I would be talking to my class online through Google Meet, and I would ask a student a question, and they said, well, hold on, Mr. V, I'm having a side chat with 3 other students on Discord about this problem. We need to talk about it for a couple more minutes, and we'll come back. And so it was interesting to me that they were doing, now it's not, obviously not something they're going to do in the middle of their in-person class, at least I hope, but that they are finding ways, and they do find ways to potentially network with each other, but not necessarily to that same degree. It's an important aspect. I can remember, I don't know how many of you will remember the name Rich Fritz, who was an AP biology teacher of some renown. And he would bring his kids in to school every Saturday because they wanted to be there and be part of this group and this network of at least 100 kids who'd come in and have study sessions together and just watch him work magic up at the board. And he was a Pied Piper. He was one of these cultural differences of that course took off at one school based on the personality of a teacher and the kids finding a network with each other that they would get into study groups, not because it was arduous or anything over the top, because they were enjoying it. And your last and most important point, thank you, the balance of standard courses. I didn't write it down because I knew I was going to remember it. The balance of standard courses. It's interesting because in some regard, the question comes up, standard course AP as two options, as I think you were describing, and what does that mean? Because to me that means something very similar to standard course or an honors course, where you have the same course and two levels. Having the AP level serve as your honors, in my mind, is the way to do it. If you're bringing in a third option, I think that gets back to the point that Avery was making. That third option, if it's serving a unique purpose, if we're saying we're trying to find, I can't draw students into AP US history that I'm interested in, and I figured out maybe I'm not meeting the need of their perspective, and I look at whether it be the AP, whether it be the U.S. history from the African American experience, or as the states recently done, the Black and Latino Studies course. I think these are efforts where we're trying to provide a genuine alternative that differs from depth. One of the things I'm concerned about is if we start to over-incrementalize a standing curriculum. And we did this in biology. We have a standard biology, an honors biology, and an AP biology. And I'll go out on a limb and say something unpopular. In my mind, that was probably one of our biggest mistakes, because what is the true difference from level A to level B to level C? Can we really incrementalize the curriculum that refined, where we need to sort kids into three separate buckets? It's a big question. There are a lot of districts that don't believe in honors. There are a lot of districts that all their courses are honors. Not a lot of districts, but I've seen that, where every single course in their curriculum is considered an honors. And it's sort of like saying, well, we don't have an honors program. We're gonna do high quality pedagogy, high quality curriculum in all classes. It's a very interesting question. I think our option is we are trying to draw and promote the experience and demonstrate the capability of all students. We think about AP as being this rigorous, unattainable as adults. And I know we hear a lot of the concern from our adult constituents. Typically, when we get our kids in there, our kids are just rising to the challenge. They're just rising to the experience, and our teachers are scaffolding and supporting them in the work. It's not a frenzied, caffeine-driven, nervous experience. They're able to do it, and to me, that's the big message.
And I think we need to disabuse parents, because talking to kids, a lot of this is parents that, oh my gosh, you don't have honors chemistry, you have AP chemistry or chemistry. Colleges don't care if it says honors. They don't. I mean, they'd only care if you put the honors in and then made it 3 levels. Because all that matters to them is, okay, it's a chemistry course. You took chemistry. I mean, the notion, I actually think what we get accused of with AP is what people are trying to do oftentimes with honors, is that chase something that really doesn't exist in admissions offices. All admissions offices look at is, what do you offer, what did children take? So by offering it, you're incentivizing even further level and breaking kids apart than you'd be doing the way we're doing it.
No, it's a helpful way to explain it, and I think for people who are trying to wrap their heads around it, or even the kids, I think when you do explain it that way, it starts to just educate the parent community too about what the thinking is behind the strategy.
Before I go back to Avery, is there anyone who hasn't asked a question yet who would like to ask a question? Jason. Just trying to spread it around a little bit.
Thank you. I really enjoy this conversation, and it is so amazing to serve on this board and to be able to work with such a high-powered district is really giving this very serious thought. And one of the research questions that has driven the inclusion of African American studies and Latin American and Latinx studies is not, on the one hand, those are fields of study which have their own right to have that high level of pedagogy and learning. On the other hand, there's the secondary effect of having that course and then producing those kinds of confidence levels in students that they would then be able to think of themselves, as you were saying, think of themselves as AP test takers, as AP course, that those courses are also for them. Those are the kind of rationales that I think also kind of cast a long shadow over the whole system to say that that's not just happen in high school, right? But those are one of the reasons why I value the district's emphasis on cultural competency in all grade levels is that you get that accumulated effect over each grade level to then have that impact. So I'm interested to see how these new courses come into play and what can we say about that, and not only in terms of participation and performance for students, but then also to think about those secondary effects, those spillover effects. Thinking along those lines and those larger cross-curriculum, cross-grade level impacts. And the issue of ECE has come up, and I'm wondering, maybe that's a different presentation, but it seems to maybe correspond. Did you see the same level of participation decline in ECE courses, or was there a dip in AP and an increase in ECE, or just kind of curious what that picture looked like for the same period?
One of the things that we saw that I think will address your question is some of the students who didn't end up sitting for the exam wasn't necessarily they didn't take the course in the AP. So we had some students, and I specifically talked to some counselors in Conard Hall, and it seemed to be a little bit more at Conard, that some seniors in some courses who were accepted to college, given the pandemic, chose not to take the test near the end. In fact, one of the counselors said, I think you've written the numbers by grade. You'll see more seniors where you lost your test participation at Conard. And again, some trends get a life in a school, and maybe it didn't at Hall. You wouldn't have that problem with EC, because once you enroll, I just enrolled my daughter today for 3 of those UConn classes. Just hit the button before I came. Once you're enrolled. And you get the course, you take the exam, so you've paid ahead of time. There's not that 2-window week of AP tests, which you can get out of later. So I don't think, although we haven't run the numbers, I wouldn't anticipate that as much. It's just a different process, if that makes sense.
But I did want to add one quick point, just because I thought you made an excellent point, Jason, and it's about students maybe seeing themselves. You're talking about those courses where the curriculum themselves and the content, the value of studying it, and hopefully changes mindset or helps to encourage mindset for students to see themselves as more valued, learning about the history. But then, how does that translate into how do I see myself in this school setting? Do I see that? And it gets back to Amanda's question in some regard too about, I think generational differences. What AP meant when I went to school, I went to a very small high school. The AP program was very elite. The ECE program used to be that way. I had an English language learner that I taught in mathematics. I had him in pre-algebra. I got him into statistics. It was an ECE AP statistics. He wasn't allowed in ECE because he didn't have a particular GPA. but that kid got a 5 on the exam. And it was just one of those things, and you know, the whole criteria has since that time changed, started to break down the barriers of why are we putting up gates that would necessarily prevent kids? Why don't we enable the kids to get in and allow their achievement to speak for how they're going to do? And you know, I think that was insightful in terms of what we're really after with our entire program of studies. So thank you for that.
Lorna, and then we'll go to Avery.
See, Paul, I wasn't going to comment, but what you just said, I just have to acknowledge that because that's just what was going through my mind, the appreciation for opportunity and allowing the opportunity for students to take the exam. I recall several years ago, each year, you all speaking about how there was a time where there were persons who were not supportive of opening it up to others, and we have to be honest and keep it real in that regard. However, you all persevered and still allowed that opportunity, and just so appreciate how recognizing the importance of allowing having faith in students and hoping for that faith to certainly instill within themselves, to have faith in themselves to do better, and opportunity certainly allows for that. So just thank you for continuing to do that.
Thank you. Avery?
I'll try to keep this brief. I understand that we have other matters, but and I'll attempt to keep this precise. I want to circle back to the discussion we had earlier that Ms. Aronson brought up about the social environment of AP courses, and perhaps this can speak to as to why certain demographics of students don't have the same participation rate. And just, this is anecdotal evidence, but of the culture. In my experience, students of color and even just queer students, neurodivergent students, are often excluded from social networks that may be useful for other students, like you're talking about Discord. And if that isn't incorporated within the curriculum, that sort of ESL aspect, I think it can be a real barrier to allowing students to gain the most from a course. And so I really wonder what we could do, or what we are doing as a district to meet those targets for students who are of different demographics.
That's excellent, well-stated question. What you're really hitting on, what I'm really thinking about as I'm listening to your question, is really the entire underpinning of our work as it relates to both social emotional learning, social justice, everything that we're doing with Dr. Haskins' office relating to equity advancement. And we were talking about this just under the context of having little to do with AP, but I think you're drawing kind of the connection for me that if over a period of years, if you're not feeling comfortable in the school environment, if you don't, if school is not a place where you get to be you and you are able to form meaningful relationships with a significant enough people, it doesn't mean that you're going to be, friends with everyone or winning in the popularity contest, but you feel safe, you feel comfortable, you feel welcomed, and you feel like you matter at school. If we're not able to create those conditions, then yes, we're not going to see you actively engaged in whether it be the AP program, whether it be sports and athletics, whether it be music and theater. We're not going to see you engaged in that school community. That is our effort. That is our, basically the entire underpinning of our equity efforts. Has a lot to do with the equity policy that this Board of Education passed, has a lot to do with a number of the different curricular pieces that we're trying to instill so we can set those conditions for all kids. And that then translates into AP enrollment, that translates into graduation rates, that translates into so many different things, but it translates basically into success for all students. So that's what resonated with me when I heard your question. And there's so much that we're doing on so many fronts on that, that we're going to talk a lot about over the course of this year.
Thank you. Any other questions? That was an extremely comprehensive presentation. Thank you very much. Careful of your head, please. All right, we're going to move on to routine matters and to item A, the financial report. Approval of the financial report for the period ending June 30, 2021. And I will ask Liz Hewitt to join us. And I will walk us through. I know everybody's mind is really fresh right now. So I'll take the opportunity to walk us through the financial report. And when you have questions, Liz will be the person who will be able to answer them best. So if you turn to page 12 of your packets, you'll see that this is the financial report for the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. And it's basically reflective of what we saw all during the last school year. There shouldn't be too many surprises here. In fact, anyone around this table could probably give this report, since I know you're all very versed in all the details from each of the monthly reports. Just the overall review of the year is, we had a lot of different funds coming in and going out throughout the year. And overall, we hit our mark for the most part. We did return just under $182,000 to the town, which is, given $170+ million budget, a percentage of 0.11%, which is lower than we normally do. So kudos to Liz and to the whole team for basically coming in almost exactly right on our expenditures. I'll just take you through a little bit on our salaries. We had some reassignments, mainly due to the fact that we were offering a remote school in addition to an in-person school. And between the reassignments and some of the ESSER funds, those basically account for the variances from our salary line items. Moving on to benefits, negligible variance on the benefits, partially attributable, however, to about double the number of retirements last year than we typically have. Under purchase services, a couple of items to mention are reduced transportation costs, and that is partially because summer school in the summer of 2020 was remote, so we didn't have any transportation costs there. We had fewer buses to games and other extracurricular activities, and reduced transportation needs for outplaced students because a lot of them chose remote learning. We also, however, had increased costs in out-of-district tuition for certain students, and then we had to utilize staffing agencies to fill certain positions, and so that cost us a little bit more money than it would have if we had been able to just hire folks on our own. So hoping to avoid that as much as we can this year. And that was our little advertisement for go look at our Help Wanted page. Under supplies, materials, and capital outlay, you'll see we had a deficit there, and partially that's because we made some year-end purchases to set us up for this year. Some of those purchases were like replacement laptops and iPads. Remember, we gave out so many laptops, and we got some of them back, but they have now been utilized way more than they would typically be used in a given year. So some of those Chromebooks and so forth needed to be refreshed. We also bought new textbooks and more outdoor equipment so that we can do more outdoor learning, so shade structures and so forth, which I think we're hearing very positive responses to being able to spend more time outdoors in our school setting. For 21-22, this current year, remember that we set aside some funds to kind of roll over into our budget for this year, and so that is the $750,000 for that. Moving on to our grants funds, and this is page 18. We are pretty much on track with these. There are a couple of grants that did expire without being fully expended. It's a very small amount, and almost entirely those are grants that go to private schools that kind of get passed through West Hartford, and we only send them to the private schools if they ask for them. And so just a small amount of money they didn't ask for there. And then a family literacy program that we were hoping to run with our adult education resource grant that we were unable to run due to the pandemic, and so we were unable to expend that. But for the most part, anything that's unexpended is going to be able to roll over, so we'll have more time to spend these grants out in the way that we typically do. Just to point out the ESSER 1 grant, which is about 2/3 of the way down, it's line 502062. And that is, you'll see that we still have a balance of a little over $500,000. So not to fret about that, because we have until next September 30th to expend that grant. Moving on to special funds. We do have an increase in revenue on the special funds report. You'll see, most of this there very little change. For example, instrument rental was down, facility rentals were down, but the big change here has to do with the reimbursement for educational services. We have an increase in revenue. This is essentially revenue from our open choice kids who have special education needs. And so those kids, Hartford pays for their special ed needs here, and we are able to utilize those funds for services. And again, because of the pandemic, not all the funds were expended. There were lower transportation costs for out-of-district placements. So we're expecting to see this kind of even out this year. And then finally, our nutrition services fund. You'll see under the 2020-2021 monthly operating results, that first column on the table, that we did turn things around. So March, April, May, and June looked really good last year, compared particularly with the early months of the year. However, we did still end the year with an operating loss of about $207,000. We, as a board, chose to plug that hole and add a little bit of extra money as well through the ESSER grant of $350,000. And so with that, we have a fund balance in our nutrition services fund of $563,713, which positions us well for this year. I'm hearing good things about our meal counts this year. We are, again, just as a reminder, providing all of our breakfast and lunch for free this year because of the federal funding that is available. So anybody who wants a meal can get one, and I'm hearing that the meal counts are going up, and that will help us significantly. So that is the report, and I will open it up for questions. No questions? One question. Amanda.
I promise it's a softball for the baseball night. Are we doing any facility rentals this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You're right, that was easy.
That was a good one. Okay, with that then, I will seek a motion for the board to approve the financial report for the period ending June 30th. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. And a second?
Second.
I think Jason got you there, Liz. Seconded by Jason. Any further discussion? If not, I will try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Thank you so much, Liz, and just kudos to you for all of the management and also all of your thorough explanations for the financial examiners, Mark and me. Appreciate it. Watch your head. Moving on to item B, approval of the minutes. I'm seeking a motion to approve the minutes from the September 21st, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved. Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lorna. Any discussion about the minutes? If not, I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to information and reports. Board members, communications and reports. Are there any reports from other boards and organizations? And just for members of the public, board members here, we serve as liaison to many different boards and organizations, and this is the time when we would report on that, but some of those have not started meeting yet for the year. No other information and discussions, so we will move on to non-staff communications and reports. Reports from our student board representatives, and we'll start with Avery.
Thank you. Hull High School honors National Hispanic Heritage Month with daily trivia and community lessons on the Hispanic culture and people. Next week, grades 9 through 11 will be taking the PSAT on October 13th. Curriculum night is tomorrow, October 6th. Families have received a short video from their students' teachers and can meet with them virtually. Fall sports and clubs continue to meet in person, and Hall continues to support seniors with senior planning Q&A sessions for parents through November.
Thank you. Andrew.
Much of what Avery said at Hall is true for Conard. For ongoing Hispanic Heritage Month, we've had community block lessons oriented around that, and today after school, the World Language Department held a Hispanic Heritage Month related scavenger hunt. Further in line with West Hartford Public Schools' emphasis on social emotional learning, Conard has been advertising the upcoming Out of the Darkness Walk, which is a suicide prevention and mental health awareness walk on October 16th at Great River Park in East Hartford. Also, curriculum night is tomorrow for Conard, and next week on Wednesday, freshmen, sophomore, and juniors will be taking the PSAT, although seniors aren't taking the PSAT as is natural. They have the option to go into school during that time when testing is happening for help and with college applications and post-secondary guidance. And the last thing I'll mention is also, like Hall, sports and extracurricular activities are in person, and a number of sports teams are having their senior nights this week, including girls field hockey, who had theirs yesterday.
Thank you very much. Future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Our next 3 meetings are Tuesday, October 19th, Wednesday, November 3rd. Both of those are at 7. And then Tuesday, November 16th at 6 p.m. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Mark?
Not necessarily an agenda item, but an alibi. I've served on the board for 9 years, and there's been a long-standing tradition, with the exception of last year, and we're kind of losing it, and I'm hoping that maybe you guys could regenerate it, is that part of your reports, sports and the scores and wins over to certain schools was always part of the report. You know, I just think of one thing. I think field hockey at Hall is ranked in the country right now. I think it's field hockey, right? So things like that, if you don't mind adding, because we lost it during COVID. We had it, and then we lost it, and we seem to have not come back to it. So if that's something that you're so inclined, I'd appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Any other requests? Are there any comments from visitors? Okay. We do not have an executive session, and so I will seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Lorna. A second?
Second.
Seconded by Liz. Meeting is adjourned at 9:44 p.m. Thank you.